I'm really happy to see that there's so many people, who have taken your time off on a holiday like this, that you're investing, you want to invest into the future of young people. That makes me quite excited and places a great demand on me. Now, the time that we have is very limited, and I'm going to see what best I can do within this limited time. So the first session that I'm going to cover is on introduction to coaching. Essentially, if you see, coaching, when I started exploring into it, largely comes from the biblical perspective. And the founder of the International Coach Federation is a Christian, okay, and he started it off. And there's another leading coaching federation, is the Coach Federation of India. And even for that, the basic foundational module has been designed by, if I'm right, the name Prashantam, who was the founder of the Vellore Christian Counseling Center. So it has its root in the scriptures, it has its roots in Christianity, and therefore, I suppose it's going to be very easy for you to follow. And as we go on, I'll also differentiate between, but very, very briefly, what is going to be the difference between coaching, mentoring, and counseling. But I would be anchored to only coaching. But I'll just tell you the difference in a very, very brief way. So we'll start off. You can take notes, and as you take notes, if you have any questions, put that down. After 40 minutes, we'll be having a question session, and Sharon will be moderating that, so that don't take time off during the 10 minutes to write down your questions. But as we go on, if you can choose to put down your questions, what you need clarification, I'll do my best to clarify that to you. Okay, so let me share my screen. Yeah. So this is introduction to, yeah. Now, I'd like to begin with a question. Why you want to be a coach? Why you want to be a coach? Can I have some responses on the chat box, please? Why you want to be a coach? So on the chat box, if you can just put a question, I'm sorry, give you an answer, why you want to be a coach. Thank you. Thanks, Ambrose. Thank you. To train more leaders, excellent. To guide someone to the right path, great. To make them perfect, to help others, excellent. Thank you. So now, what is the difference between coaching and mentoring? Okay, let me briefly take you through this. Coaching was born, in 1974, when this person called Galloway, who was a tennis coach, who discovered something different from just doing work on the field. So he wrote a book called The Inner Game. That is, he says the opponent inside the mind is greater than the opponent on the field. Can you mute, please? So how do you manage the inner game? And that attracted the attention of a lot of corporate people. And then the subject of coaching was born. Actually, it is to say that what they say is potential. Just a minute, I'll have a look at this. Performance is equal to potential minus interference. So coaching basically comes into how you can remove the interference. Potential is already existing. So the example is about a 1-year-old child. When it starts learning, you're not going to give instructions for the child to learn. The potential to walk is inside the child itself. So any human being, whatever he or she wants to do, the potential is there. So the coach actually removes the interference and makes the path clear. So it is a sort of a co-creative activity that we get into. And a coach has to be trained only in coaching, how exactly you have to coach. but not on the subject. So a coach can be a coach in the life coach sense, I would say, can coach on any subject because he's using the tool called coaching. But whereas when we come to mentoring, a mentor has to know the subject, and the mentor is instructive, right? There is a belief difference between the coach and the mentor. The mentor goes with, like, I know a little more than you, so listen to me, and I have been through this way, and I'm going to share this with you. But whereas a coach says, you already know the way, you have to learn. I'm going to ask you the right questions, and you're going to discover. So removing the interference will be the coaching approach, clarifying through questions and focusing. But whereas mentoring is you have to have the knowledge in that specific subject to coach the person. So it is more instructive. And as opposed to counseling, because quite a number of counseling school people over here, I'm going to go into the depth of it, but coaching is only forward-looking. It does not go into any regressive area. It is only forward-looking. So it creates clarification and focus into the future. So generally, a coach is advised, if you see any psychological issue which traces back into the past, then terminate the coaching, send the person to a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, get it right, and then come back to coaching. So there is a difference. A coach only looks into forward, and he's not a trained behavioralist, though they do a lot of work inside. He's not a trained behavioralist. So these are the fundamental difference between these three. Objective of this evening session is going to be an introduction to professional coaching format. See, the idea of putting coaching session today is, now each of you are going to be trained how to help young people discover their purpose in life, which is so essential these days. Now, how to discover their purpose in life and execute their mission in life. So to do this, we are using this instrument by Eric Ries called Shape, which we have modulated it and made it a little more easy to handle and also connect with mission. So you're going to use this tool and help the young people on how to discover their purpose. And it requires somebody to anchor the process and take. And that's the perspective with which we are bringing in the coaching into this session. So therefore, what I will do is I'll limit myself very much only to that aspect, because coaching per se is a huge subject, and there are many hours that we have to spend really to go into the depth of it. So we will limit only to the introduction of it, but I'll see that you get enough to do your job. So this coaching session is to help you use the life purpose pyramid model, which is actually contains a shape. The framework which uses a tool called, this I already explained. Now, what happens in a coaching process? Okay. Now, what a coachee wants gets clarified. I'll be using this word coachee or client from the next slide onwards. The person who's receiving coaching, I'll call him as a client, because I'm also bringing in a corporate perspective. I'm also trying to be a little generic in certain places, not very specific to Shape. So here, a coachee or a young person, a young adult wants to get clarified. So how to reach this goal is worked out. So it becomes a co-creative process. So you sit and work with the young adult. The aspect of discovering the goal becomes his responsibility, but you do a walking alongside the person. The coachee is held accountable by you. So there is an accountability partner that the young adult has during this journey. So you create the process to which the coachee gets anchored and feels confident of achieving the goal. So you become a co-traveler in a journey towards growth. Okay? So the coaching tenure is time-bound. Now, see, unlike mentoring, I would recommend that you also follow the coaching model in terms of there is a definite time that is set. Usually it ranges from 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, right? Not beyond that. Usually it is within this period. And you set time either once a week or once in 15 days or once a month. So depending upon the intensity of the work that needs to be done. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you what is the 4 stages of coaching. From now on, I'm getting technical with you, right? So you can take notes and we'll see what sort of notes I can send to you also. So the first one is establish the context for the coaching. I'm going to take you deep into this. First, let me give you the framework. So establish the context of the coaching, why this coaching is required and why the client is sitting in front of you. Okay? The next is create understanding and direction. Right? The goal setting is being done. Then after that, review and confirm learning. So once you set the process, every session you start reviewing. And finally, you give a completion and a closure. So now these are the 4 stages of coaching. Now we'll see stage by stage, each of it. I'll just try and give you a little amount of data which can be contained within this time as to what you do in each of this session. So in establishing the context, it starts off from making sure the physical environment, whether it is supporting a coaching process. Right? So make sure the place that you meet, now the room is quiet without interference so that the person is able to concentrate. Then make sure the mechanics of coaching are mutually agreed upon. Now, mechanics, many things I would put into this. These days, there are various formats in which you have a face-to-face coaching, you have a Zoom coaching, you have a telephonic coaching. So you identify how this work is going to be taken on. It has to be a mutual agreement. Then how the dates are going to be scheduled. So that also is the context setting. So start and end times of coaching sessions, right? Whether we'll have a 50-minute coaching, it can range anywhere from 45 minutes to 1.5 hours. No, not beyond that, I would say. Depending also upon how many times in what is the duration? If you're meeting every week, it need not be more than 30 minutes to 45 minutes. If you're meeting 15 days, it can be 90 minutes, 60 minutes to 90 minutes. So you set the time. Location of session or by telephone, I already told you. Who else might be involved in the coaching? Example, their manager, another coach, or others. Now, why I'm saying this is, supposing a church is inviting you and saying that, I want these youths to be coached, to discover their call. So the sponsor is the church, right? So they also will be privy to how the progress is taking place. When you get into a corporate coaching, we have something called stakeholder coaching. The individual executive is not coming all by himself, but the management is inviting you and saying that I want these 4 executives to be coached. So the sponsor and the stakeholder is the management of the company. So we have to know whether the person is individually coming in or there's a stakeholder for this who is also going to benefit because this person is having a growth or discovering the call. Okay. The next one is the client aware of what one can expect? So I'm moving on to the word client. So the one who's getting coached, is he or she aware what can be expected in this coaching process? Does the client know what coaching is? So you have to brief and say, what sort of a behavior? Like I was talking to a very senior, an entrepreneur. He was a managing director of that company. And when I was talking about coaching, because he required that, so he turned around and said, Inba, I can't have my life tied up to a person, lifelong. So he did not have an idea how coaching works. He thought you get a coach, lifelong, you have to be attached to that person. No. So people have different ideas. You have to clarify what coaching is and how you're going to go ahead with this. Then has the client been given a written overview of the coaching process? If it's required, you do. Otherwise, you explain it also. Has the client signed a coaching agreement? In certain areas, in corporate setups, we say, we sign up an agreement. Yeah. So is there additional information you can provide for the client? Anything beyond this? Now, coming to the client perspective, does the client want the coaching? Right? Now, what happens is there's a CEO of one of the companies of British Petroleum, the top management said that he has to undergo coaching. So there was a highly expert coach who was appointed for it. So he goes and sits in front of this CEO and he says, well, Mr. So-and-so, what do you want to do with me? Right. So right at the start, it was challenging the coach. It was an affront to the coach. Of course, this person was an expert. He converted the entire process and took on. But then if the client is coming by himself or herself, you also have to find out whether coaching is really necessary. Does the client really want a coaching? Okay? Or it may be just a guidance. Right? So coaching is a very different process. So what does the client expect to happen? So you have to check out, what is your perspective of coaching? Why are you choosing to come to me for this process? Right? What do you think is going to happen? So you ask these questions. Does the client want the change? This largely happens when somebody is recommending, this person needs to be coached. If the organization is recommending, the church is recommending, you have to establish and see whether it becomes his need or it is the organization's need. But for young adults, what we have to do is, because it's for their good, the way that we talk can be converted to, the person wanting the change. What are the desired outcomes the client is looking forward to? Yeah. So that also you make it clear. So the clarification takes place. Okay. Questions that a coach might consider before deciding how much and when to use the coaching structure. So what do I already know about the objectives of this coaching assignment? How many coaching sessions will there be with this person? So you do this homework by yourself in terms of how you're going to go about doing this. Now, this is the purpose that the person wants, and the age of the person is this. This person is studying, or this person is working. So how much of time I need to really spend with this person, whether it's going to be 3 months or 2 months. Right? So you become clear about it. How many sessions would it be required? Really speaking, if you take this, the shape, it looks like you require about 7 sessions. Okay, so you want to make it 1 session every week. You want to make 1 session every 15 days. You can decide that. So where will the coaching take place? Okay? You can decide. So whether you're going to, I have even used coffee shop, Cafe Coffee Day as a coaching place where I was coaching a CEO. So you choose if you have an office by yourself or any place which is, doesn't have a disturbance and it's easy to access. What is the total duration of the coaching assignment? Okay. So who is the true sponsor of this assignment? I'd already explained this to you. How long should and can each last? I told you, right from 30 minutes to 60 minutes to 90 minutes, you can fix it up. So what experience of coaching or training might this person have had previously? You have to check out, have you ever been through a coaching process earlier? Right? Any other self-development training that you have been through? So you know how exactly to work along with this person. Okay, now that's for establishing the context of the coaching. Now we go to the creating an understanding and direction. Okay? So create understanding and direction, getting to know the client and getting to know what the client wants, maintaining a direction within each session and developing goals becomes the basic foundation for this. So what exactly the client wants, which you had already done in the previous session also, and getting to know getting to know what the client wants, maintaining the direction and developing the goals. Now, goal becomes a very important thing. Even in the very first session, you have to strike the goal and you have to have it written down. So what is this? So a way of helping someone to define their goal or objective more clearly. So in this session, that's what you do. So you help someone to gain a fuller understanding of their goal. Explore the motivation behind the goal. So unless there's a motivation behind the goal, you won't be able to make much headway. So either increases their motivation, your coaching either increases their motivation towards a goal or helps them realize they don't really want it after all. So that can also happen. That here, regarding the purpose, it may not happen, but if you're getting into any other type of a coaching and the person comes to you, the way that you ask the question, suddenly the person discovers I may not really require this. Or he may say, this is not actually what I've been looking at. It is something, your question is clarifying to me, is what he will share. So identify situations or barriers that might stop them from having their goal and agreeing to immediate actions related to the goal. Then again, when might I use this? During the initial coaching session, when discussing what goals the client wants to work on. So I would advise the very first session, you have to work on setting up the goal. So anytime that someone seems to have a vague goal or I wish I had a better job, that's why I had come to coaching for you. I wish I knew what is going to be my future, and therefore I have come to you for a coaching. So these things are where the client comes unclear, you're going to make it clear. Parts of it may also be used in isolation. Some questions work well on their own in general conversation. Now, coaching questions. One of the things that in coaching we do is, as I said, removing the interference as much as possible. We are not instructive. In counseling also, we see about non-directive approach. So in coaching also, it will be non-directive. You're not directive and instructive as much as possible. And through questions, you clarify to the person. So there will be various question formats that I will be introducing you to. Now, what do you want? Actually, there is a principal of a school came to me once, having heard about me, he sat in front of me and he said, Inba, I want you to do something to my school. Then, when you ask the question, if you're asking the question from your very being of empathy, it really strikes the person. A simple question I put to this person is, Venki, what do you really want to do for your school? For years together, he was speaking about that question. He said, that question hit me like a thud. And then he went about clarifying what he really wants. And that school went in for ISO 9000 certification after a few years, and even experimented with invigilator-less examination, right? To that extent, there was a growth. That one question which hit him. So when you really ask from a depth, a certain question, it really touches your client. So what do you really want? With delicateness and empathy, when you ask, that really triggers the person to start thinking. Right? What would you rather have or have be true about the situation? Right? So how exactly you want this to be happening to you? Okay? Then what do you want instead? So suppose you're not going to get that, what else can you get? Right? The question that this headmaster came and asked me was, he wanted some training program. Right? That's what he came for. But what I asked completely changed into something else. Something else came in instead. What is it you actually do want? So different ways of asking the same after getting the response. When you're delving deep, different ways of clarifying. Okay. Now pulling this closer. We want the person to get specific. So you become specific about what, where, when, with whom. Now, these are some of the questions. I'm giving you question models to you. Now, use the senses to pull it together. Yeah. See, over a period of time, some of you who have gone through counseling would have realized this, but otherwise you can just note this down. There's a training society called Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences. It's also short form is ISABS, ISABS. You go through it. It's human sensitivity training, human process training. You become very sensitive to what is happening inside the other person. It's largely by working with your own self. So use your senses to pull it together. Is you will sense what is the struggle with this person, and can you narrow down what exactly the person wants. So how will you know when you have your dream job? You're asking the person questions like this. Now, what will be the indicator that you have reached your goal? So imagine you have your dream job. What do you feel like? Right? Yeah. You're exploring further with the person, whether he really is looking for this. And then how are things different now that you have your dream job? So how are things different now? See, you have got your job. Now, how does it change things now? Now, how does this affect the way you look? So these questions, you can moderate it when you're helping a person to identify his or her call, a purpose, or mission in life. What are people saying about you now that you have this dream job? So imagine you have this dream job. Now tell me what that's like. Right? So you use such questions for narrowing it down. So this is creating an understanding and direction. And then finally, when the person is identified, you ask them to write it down. You write down the goal. And I don't have much time. I'll see if I have the time later on. This word that we use, SMART, which is very specific, which is measurable, which is achievable, which is time bound, which is realistic. So the goal that the person writes down, when he or she reaches it, you should be able to say, I have reached it. There's a measurability to it. There's a realism to it. Okay. Now they will go into how do we conduct the reviewing and confirm the learning. This is actually the core of coaching. Yeah? Now, review and confirm. This is where you use your processes. So are the coaching sessions working well? Are they productive, worthwhile? So this is a thought process that goes within you. So what impact are the sessions having on the client? So now what I would encourage you to do is that you have to maintain a diary or a small 40 pages or a 60-page notebook for every client that you're working with. So you write down your own notes. You write down also the journal as the session is happening. Right? So both needs to be there. So what progress has been made on the client's goals? So you see 2 sessions are over. Is the person really traveling towards the goals? Are the steps that are being taken is moving towards the goals? Then is the coach's style and approach working for the client? So I'm taking it in a certain way. Every coach have their own way of approaching and style. So you are evaluating yourself. My style, is it working with this young adult? Are there any issues that need to be resolved? Is there anything that is not working? So this also have to be identified. And if there's something that works as a roadblock, let me see towards the end, I have another model called GRACE. I'll see if I can share that with you. So are there any roadblocks, which is stopping this person? Then we have to identify, then we have to take a break and work on the roadblock before we move towards the journey to the goals. Then how could the sessions be improved? So this is a very intense work that the coach does with himself or herself in order to evaluate that you're giving the best value to the client. Okay. Now, ways to review progress of a coaching assignment. Give the client a questionnaire to complete between sessions. So this can be a feedback to you. Okay. Now, use a questionnaire to conduct a structured review session with the client. Now, you're not giving the question to the person, but in the next session, you have a questionnaire. You have it as a sort of an interview guide with you, and then you ask the person and you receive the answers. Then schedule an unstructured discussion with the client to explore the progress of the coaching. So you're not calling this a coaching session. You just get out, over a cup of tea someday in the middle. Now, let it be unstructured so that you have a freedom to explore and so that you get the feedback on how the coaching is progressing. Conduct regular, smaller reviews with the client. Mid-session, over the phone, you can call up a person, how you're doing, what's happening. So it's a small review, but you're getting a sort of a feedback. Ask for informal feedback from the client on an ad hoc basis. Then arrange for a third party, maybe another coach to facilitate a discussion. So this coach, can be with you or without you also, who comes and evaluates and says, how do you think it's going on? Do you feel confident? Do you think that you're able to move towards your purpose in life? You're able to plan strategies to work out your mission in life? how the sessions are going. So you can have a third-party evaluation also. Now, the net of net is that the client is getting the value. The young adult is getting the value. That becomes the focus. So complete a feedback questionnaire on your experience as a coach. So you can also have your own, there are questionnaires available. So you see how you are progressing. Now, this one is at the start, it is very important, but even on a ongoing process also, it will be helpful. Okay, now linking your coaching to results. You ask questions in this. What benefits do you see from the coaching? Now, ask the person to articulate it. How he can be sure. What are the evidence of it? Then, what effects are the coaching conversation having on your work-home relationship? This person whom I said, the British Petroleum CEO, that person, first entered into this relationship of coaching to work on a relationship in his house, right? And when he saw a significant difference, then he said, I would like to work on my work life. So many times what happens is, as you're working on this individual, the young adult's parents may come back to say that, what you've been doing, or the church pastor will come back to say, hey, what's been happening? I see a lot of difference in this person. So what you evaluate, what effects are the coaching conversation having on your work-home relationship? Question can be addressed to the youth itself. If you hadn't had the coaching, what would be different now? So it helps the person to evaluate how the journey has progressed. If you continue with these new behaviors and routines, how is the future going to be different? So you're getting the person into a deeper thought. You're entrenching the change inside the person and also making it futuristic. Then what have you received from the coaching conversations? Different ways of seeing, has value been imparted? So how has coaching affected your quality of life? The person could be becoming more patient, the person can be becoming more focused, the more organized. So there are many side effects that coaching also creates. Okay, so now we finished 3 parts of it. Now, how do we do the completion and closure? So this is the logical final stage of coaching. However great, many times this coaching relationship becomes very, very close, right? And the coachee, in many occasions, treats the person with a lot of respect, like a guruji sort of thing, and really does not desire that the relationship terminate. But however best it is, you have to give a completion to a specific journey that is marked by achieving the goal. So this is logically the final stage of coaching, and its purpose is to bring the coaching assignment to a natural conclusion. Now, no matter how amazing the benefits from the coaching have been, or how enjoyable and stimulating the coaching relationship is, each coaching assignment comes to an end, unless you have a progressive client who decides to continue with coach by entering into a quarterly session contract. See, in the corporate, this coaching sessions can cost, right, anywhere from as little as 5,000 rupees. It can move on to 50,000 rupees per session. So usually the contract is done like this. If an executive is going to be coached, usually it is, the rates may differ 4 lakhs to 6 lakhs to 8 lakhs, which would be charged over 6 months to 8 months, which means it could have 12 sessions or 10 sessions or 12 sessions. Right? So if the person is able to afford, then he says, I would like to have a quarterly session. I'd like to continue the contract. So we also need to acknowledge that some clients decide to return to a coaching relationship when they need a clearer focus or more support over a period of time. That is, after one coaching has been completed and then the life has been going on, the person finds a new situation where more growth is required, then the person may also come back. So you can also say that if there is, in future, if there is a need, you acknowledge that need and say that you can come back if it is required. So why completion? When completing the coaching assignment, the coach aims to leave the client feeling that the coaching has been worthwhile. Where there was a sponsor or a church involved, they should also feel that they have received value from their investment. I'm putting investment because if it's going to be charged, then it becomes investment on the part of the sponsor or the stakeholder. Identify ways in which the client may continue to learn when the coaching session has ended. This is sort of a personal development plan. And make sure that the client feels they have ways of accessing further support if they want it. So you can always say that I'm available if you need any support. So help create a personal development plan to learning and to keep the learning alive. That's what I mean. To keep the learning and growth alive. Okay. Okay. Now, I'll quickly take you through this. I just have about 4 or 5 minutes for this. To make the entire thing, what I said, into a very easy model, this is called the GRACE coaching model. I would recommend that you use this model and with the skills that you learned in whatever that I've been taking till now. See, first is goal that we saw it just now also. Be very clear, what is the goal? And write it down and make the goal very smart, which means it is going to be specific, it's going to be measurable, it's going to be achievable, it's going to be a realistic goal, it is going to be time-bound goal. So first, put the goals down. Now, when you put a goal down, the person is coming to you because the person is not able to do it by himself. I'll give you a very, very simple goal. Supposing, since there are a lot of pastors and theological people, a young adult comes and says, uncle or Anand, I'm not able to concentrate on my prayer. I sit down and pray for 10 minutes and my mind goes off, right? So now the goal is you desire to have an uninterrupted, joyful association with God in prayer for at least an hour. Is that what you want? So the goal is written down. Now, what he had already expressed was that he is facing a roadblock. Now you have to diagnose and find out what is this roadblock. Now, what is the sort of disturbance that you get in your mind? So the person says, what I watch in social media and what I watch on YouTube, this comes and, starts disturbing my mind. Then your discussion goes, how much of screen time that you spend in a day? It says at least 3 years, 3 hours. So now roadblock number 1 has been identified, and you tell the person, can you reduce this by, say, 1 hour this week? Is that workable? What do you say? How much of time? This also, I made a mistake here. You should be asking the question directly. Okay, 3 hours of screen time. Is there any possibility that you can reduce this? Then the person responds. And those sort of thoughts that come and disturb, on which sites they are. Is it possible for you to limit, visiting those sites? So you identify the roadblock, make the person accept it, and write it down. So roadblock, so you will put this as focus action number 1. So this is the next step. So you're converting the roadblock to handle it as an action point. So focus action number 1 would be that you will be reducing your time. Focus action number 2 will be you will limit visiting those sites which create disturbing thoughts in you. Right? And now, supposing the person has told that I feel very sleepy, then you check out when do you hit your bed? So I hit my bed around 12:30. So when you try to get up, I try to get up at 5:30. Okay, so that's the reason you're feeling sleepy. Is there any way that you can get to bed a little early? Okay, now that you're saving 1 hour from this screen time, so the person says, yes, I think I can hit the bed around 11 o'clock. So focus action number 2, hitting the bed by 11 o'clock. Right. Now, what happens is you give the time duration. Are you meeting once in a week? Are you meeting once in a 15 days? So at that point in time, you check. So last week, we set up this focus action. How did it go with focus action 1? Then how did it go with 2, 3? How do you feel right now? Has there been any improvement? Oh, yes. Now at least 20 to 30 minutes, I'm able to sit in the presence of God. Right? So this is a sort of a cycle that keeps working, removing roadblock by roadblock till the person reaches the goal. And finally, you see there's an evolving in the person. There is a growth in this person. Okay. So this is what I wanted to say. Be specific when you set up the goals. What is that you want? Make it measurable. Will you know when you have reached the goal? See, measurability, I'll just say this, you can take it down. Anything can be measured if you convert it into quantitative aspect, qualitative aspect, cost aspect, and time aspect. Right? Quantitative, qualitative, time, cost. You can do mixes of these things also. So measurability, you can't say how to measure this. Anything can be measured when you bring it down into these 4 classification. And then action-oriented. What specifically will you do to reach this goal? So that's what we saw. We are putting actions for that. And then realistic. So unrealistic dreams can lead to failure. So you're making the goal realistic. And then time-oriented. By what time the person should get. Okay. So I think major skills coaching. This already the counseling students will already be knowing this. See, the human relations aspect of it, rapport building, asking questions, giving supportive feedback, developing intuitiveness are same. Whatever you use for counseling, you also use here in your coaching or in your mentoring. It's the same. Okay? Now, I'm ready to take questions. I'll stop sharing for a while. So I have about 7 minutes, I think. So are there any questions?
Okay, as the students are typing out the questions, please do type out the questions. I think everybody's just getting warmed up to the information. So thank you so much, Anand. I was just wondering whether if it is possible for you to just give us an example of a youngster whom you ran through the 4 stages of coaching, like some specific issue they came for, and then you helped them through the process, just to give pictures idea of it.
There's grace, what I said, that covers it. See, once you set where exactly you're going to do. So now, this is a person where I worked with. We will meet in the coffee shop in Cafe Coffee Day. So the setting has been worked out, and we said we'll meet like this once in 2 weeks, and we will meet for 60 minutes. So you set it up. In the first session, when I sat down to work on the person, worked out the goals that he wanted to achieve. Right? The goals were clearly written down. Now, reaching that goal, I started asking questions in terms of, why do you think you'll find it difficult to reach these questions? I'm sorry, goals. So now as we started making it more and more threadbare, found a lot of blocks were there. So we identify block by block and take it as focus action 1, 2, 3, put it down. Because now supposing a person says, it's also in your pyramid model, your shape book. A person says, I want to be a missionary in Orissa. Then what are the blocks for you to go right now over there? One is language, right? Another is culture. Now, focus action 1 will be to learn the language. Focus action 2 will be to learn the culture. So the GRACE model will be the easiest model for you to understand and do it.
Okay, so we have a question from Sister Hotoli. She wants to know, let me just go through the question 1 second. Hotoli wants to know the difference between growth groups and
Say that again.
coaching. The difference between growth group and coaching group.
Growth group. Huh? I'm not acquainted with any growth group, except that what we do with, because group I'm going to come over. It's going to be the third session. At that point in time, I will be explaining about certain groups, the models in which to be approached. So this one is what I'm dealing with is individual.
Okay.
So
Okay.
maybe I'll revisit this question when you come to the third session.
Okay. Another question that we have is we could start with one goal, but as we go on, we have.
I'm losing you.
Newer goals that the client wants to achieve. Then we add to the existing goal, or do we use it as?
I lost you for a while. Can you type it down on the chat box?
It's already there in the chat box.
The client is not moving towards the goal. Do I have to guide them to another coach, or do I have to reboot? See, first of all, we need to look into when we did the ground setting at the start, did we work it out to find whether that was the goal? Now, if the person is not reaching, means there could be a couple of reasons. Okay, your style, come to it as the last, whether your style has not suited or not. First is whether the person is really serious about that goal he or she wanted, or was it misinterpreted as that goal? Sometimes the symptoms and the cause are different. What really the person wants and the way the person presents will be very different. So whether the proper diagnosis had been done and whether you'd like to revisit that. Right? Really speaking, there could be, you'll also be able to find out that when you come in, that is not really the goal that the person wanted. The person also, because it is a co-creative work when you did first. So the person also finds out, now I want to revisit this. Then you want to reboot it, you reboot it. It's perfectly fine again to reboot the session. Right? And if you want the other thing, see, there was also a coaching evaluation model, one slide I presented, where you're using questionnaire to the youth, you're using questionnaire to yourself, and you're also bringing in a third party, a coach who is assessing. So when you're running into that sort of a situation, you want to bring in a third coach to assess what has been happening. That also is perfectly fine.
Okay, here's a little deeper question about, so one of the issues with having a coaching relationship is, what if the client is afraid to change, even though they know that the change is better? So these are one of the roadblocks that come probably. So how do you handle that?
Okay, now the next session will throw a lot of light on it, because it's also where is the block for the confidence of the person. Right? So there will be a block. So it could be an internal block with the person. So how are you going to manage that? Right? So that has to be taken as a focus action to be worked on. It does require a little bit of an experience, because right at the start, we can't have it, but also your own personal development that you have to go through, we have to do that. Because if you have read this book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, it's a very powerful book. I'll recommend everybody to read that, The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, where he says a psychiatrist, before being commissioned to go into psychiatric practice, he has to go through sessions of psychiatric work. Right? Now, it's simple. Most of your counselors, unless there's an internal reconciliation, right, you cannot reconcile something which is not reconciled in another person. So if we are stuck, it means there's something more that we have to do within ourselves, right? Because it's very strange in human behavior. The more sensitive that you become with yourself, the more aware that you become with yourself, the more aware you become with others, the more sensitive you become with others. So this aspect also has to be looked into. It's not a technique, it's very organic, it is very human, it's very behavioral. So the more you work on yourself with no technology, no technique or tools, you will become sensitive to other people. Even to the extent, where I have worked on, I enter into an organization, just talk to a few people, I can write a diagnostic report, which will be 75% to 80% right. Right. So the more investment that you do with yourself, you will get the skill of becoming clear how to work with the other person.
Okay, so in a counseling relationship, we would the client and a counselor, we would probably process through those particular kind of issues. In a coaching, what would your process?
You have to. It'll be the same, but you're not going to be instructive in this. You're not going to be instructive. You will ask questions, but before that, you will clarify to yourself that you have not been a block in this process, or your skills or your sensitivity has not been a block in this. Coming back again, the slide that I showed in terms of how do you do a review as you progress, how things are going on with the client, how things are going on with you, and are there things that you have to change, and also bring in a third party if it is required.
Okay. One of the last questions we have right now is from Hepzibah. She's talking about coaching. We think along the lines of CEOs. Hello, am I back? Hello?
Yeah, you're back. Again, repeat
okay. So we have a question from Sister Hepzibah, and she was just asking, when we say coaching, it's always in conjunction with CEOs, upper management, and things like that. So is coaching accessible to youngsters and available for those young minds who are out of college who are looking for a job?
See, the thing is, it is becoming available. There are a lot of life coaches who are available, but then it is expensive. There are people who have dropped the rates where they can charge, 25,000, 30,000, or 50,000. There are quite a number of coaches who just take about 5,000 rupees per session, but still it is expensive. Supposing you're going to have 10 sessions, then it's going to be 50,000 rupees. So it is slowly becoming popular in India. It's not like abroad, but then it'll soon pick up.
Okay. I have a question.
One minute. See,
yes, sir.
Coaching subject, there are so many subjects. You have wellness coach, you have advanced coach, you have career coaches, you even have youth coaches now. So it's becoming popular and the rates are becoming affordable. One way that the coach is making his money by not being a loser is they go into group coaching. So similar goals, 10 people at a time. We'll look into it in the third section when they take it. So the market is available.